The Honourable Mary Ann Street.
Thank you very much. I feel I must rise to respond to some of those points that the Minister has just raised. First of all, with the latter point, if we work backwards in his speech, Mr. Chairman, our position was in 2008, as it is now, that there should be legislation that legislates for affordable housing, and we're opposing this legislation because it doesn't. It simply sets up accords which are ill-defined, which have no particular target, and which will not advance, judging by the words on these pages, will not advance affordable housing one jot in New Zealand, and or at least in Auckland, which is the only part that this bill applies to at the moment, despite the fact that there are housing affordability pressures in many other parts of New Zealand, including the Minister's own electorate. Mr. Chairman, just to correct the Minister again, although I'm getting a bit tired of having to get up and correct him, but just to correct him again, the bill that we had, the law that we had passed on affordable housing wasn't mandatory, but it was voluntary, and it did allow councils to take up a legal option that was not previously available to them. So we didn't mandate it. So this nonsense, this kind of approach that the Minister takes, where he says, oh, well, does the Labour Party want us to legislate for house prices or legislate for affordable housing or not? Well, we did. And we did it in a way that was much more effective and worked in concert with other measures such as shared equity in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Nelson and Queenstown, which were at that time the top 5 most expensive places to live in. And so there is no ambiguity about our position at all, Minister. The position has been in our legislation that here was a tool that was available to local authorities to use. Queenstown did. Queenstown, the member opposite says nobody took it up. Well, in fact, Clive Geddes, who was the mayor of Queenstown at the time, did take up the use of that legislation. So it's not true to say that nobody took up that legislation. Certainly that far-sighted mayor at the time in Queenstown did. The other thing I want to pick up on, Mr. Chairman, that relates to this is the Minister says is the sort of, what did he say, grunty, the grunty part of this legislation. I wish it were. I just wish it were. And I wish it did something that was a bit more detailed than it says. We have the usual complaints about the RMA. And the Minister does what he does really well, and that is isolate one example and talk about it as if it is the norm. So he takes one example of a consent difficulty, and I must say he's managed to pass this disease on to the Minister for the Environment as well, who tends to take the exception and project it as the norm for consenting. But this, Mr. Chairman, is relevant in this part because speeding consents up to 6 months may not be in anybody's best interests. When consents under the Resource Management Act take a long time, they usually take a long time for a good reason. It is possible to get past objections that are frivolous and vexatious. It's entirely possible to get past those, and the Environment Court has now set down 22 years' worth of case law to avoid that happening. But what we've got here is something that risks being so rushed at 6 months, being so rushed that it will deliver an imperfect result. And I don't want to see another Abbotsford, as the people from Dunedin will know well, occur because this minister has decided we need to speed up the process, never mind if the engineering reports haven't been done accurately, never mind if the geological... Mr Chairman, thank you very much, Mr Chairman. Never mind if the geological reports have not been done adequately, or the right people haven't been consulted, or the nature of the soil or the rock bed and the susceptibility to natural disaster has not been sufficiently gauged. Never mind that, what we'll do is say, we delivered consents in 6 months. I would rather the minister delivered safe, affordable housing than consents in 6 months. One further point I wish to make, Mr Chairman, and it relates to a point the minister made earlier, where he took sole and personal responsibility, as far as I could tell, for the drop in interest rates, for the lowering of interest rates. Never mind that there has been a global financial crisis and a period of reasonably prolonged recession around the world. Never mind that the United States is printing money to keep down interest rates artificially. Never mind that there is cheap money available around the world. The minister says that it is he and his government that has caused interest rates to drop. Mr Chairman, I just wanted to give one story. I bought my first house in 1985. I was a young teacher and I had 2 mortgages. The house cost $66,000. It was half a house. It was a terraced house in Auckland Central. And it cost me $66,000. I had $20,000 deposit because my parents had died and I borrowed my sister's money that they got and clubbed together and put down a deposit. Can I just say, I had to get 2 mortgages. First of all, the banks weren't that keen on lending to women alone. Then, never mind, we got over that hurdle. My first mortgage was 18% and my second mortgage was 23%. I remember it vividly. I remember it vividly because it took every part of my $35,000 or whatever I was earning as a young teacher at that time. And it was difficult. It was really difficult. Interest rates, Mr Chairman, are all relative. If the prices of houses are out of the reach of anybody who's on a median income or below, then it doesn't really matter what the interest rates are if they do not have the income to sustain borrowings of $360,000 or $380,000. So it's all relative. So for the minister to get up and crow about low interest rates as if it was all his own work, I think if it was all his own work, there are things that we should be a bit cross with him about. But however, if that is the case, then what the government is failing to recognise is that it is low incomes that prevent young families from being able to finance the prices of houses these days. My first house was $66,000. And still it was hard work because of the interest rates. Now the interest rates are low, but the house prices are hugely high. So we are in fact worse off now, Minister, even with low interest rates, than we were years ago. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
I call Holly Walker.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I just want to take a short call in part.